Hello.
Hi.
I'll let you know right away. I'm a huge fan, so apologies in advance if that makes me
Oh.
the opposite of professional for this interview. As you can see, I have
Okay.
the shirt that I got at the last
Oh,
concert.
yeah, baby. Nice one. Let's do this very unprofessionally.
Yes. Let me start out by saying there were a couple of things about the documentary that surprised me, and I would love to get your take on it. From the outside looking in, I've always seen you as such a private person. I was blown away that you were not only willing to do this documentary, but letting us into your home. We see your kids playing and your dog playing. And was there a moment where you made a decision? Was there one specific thing that happened where you thought this documentary needs to happen? Like, was there something that happened that speared this on?
First, can I just say, first of all, that I love that you called me a private person. I can't tell you how much I love that because it's true. And I think most people would never ever say that. They think, "Oh, it's all there in the songs. We know her," which is also true, I suppose, as many contradictory things can be true. But I feel like most people underestimate the creativity or the craft of song making, and they just think I'm just writing newspaper articles about my life, and there's all the facts, or, as though there's no art to it, or that it doesn't go to some other realm of truth,
Like
that's
you are
not,
your songs, basically.
yeah, which it's more complicated than that. I just appreciate that you could perceive that I could show so much in my songs in one way and yet be very private in another way. I think you notice something that many don't. But so yeah, letting Dana and a camera into my house, in my kitchen, was definitely a big um, leap of faith, and it was very challenging to me because when I step off stage, I like to go into a hole, and I like to just be unseen. It helps me strike a balance. Um, so yeah, I don't know. How did we end up there, Dana? We just did. Just
We did.
happened.
We did. I mean, I heard that Ani would be potentially open to having a documentary film made about her life, and I think that we had just a real strong affinity for one another. And I also feel like a lot of what Ani was struggling with in her private and personal life was, goes back to one of her core beliefs that the personal is political, right? And I felt like there was a lot of value in showing that struggle that she was going through, but really the struggle that we all go through, and how that was an important thing to show. And in bringing the film out to the world, I have been very gratified, and I hope Ani has been too, to see that people get a lot of inspiration from that. They're helped by that. It makes people feel a lot less alone. And I will also say, I too am a super private person. I think both Ani and we're shy. Ani is shy, which is another thing that I think surprises people about Ani. And I really deeply respect that. And I don't, and I struggle with it sometimes, like, oh God, I don't want, but I felt like the end product was more important, that whatever struggle, it was worth it in the end. But I really deeply respect a need for privacy in Ani's life, but in anyone's life. I think it's really critical, and especially nowadays in the world that we live in, it's a really important thing to maintain your privacy. So I think, and making any film is all about trust, and you have to trust the person. And I feel so blessed that Ani trusted me to do that.
Oh, we were all jealous of you, so you should definitely appreciate.
You should be.
We all
You
wanted to
should
be
jealous.
right next to you during the documentary. Ani, that actually something Dana said triggered something in my mind. Radio people deal with this all the time, and that is imposter syndrome, where we will meet people. They'll be like, oh my God, I listen to you every day. And some people will call themselves fans, which I find hilarious because I know the real me and that seems crazy. Do you deal with that? Do you feel like when you're on stage and you have these people saying to you, living in Clip changed my life, which I personally have heard hundreds of people say, and I'm sure you've heard it too. Do you have those moments where you're like, oh, the real me, this doesn't make sense? Or do you understand your place in all of these people's lives?
Well, I think there's a lot in the template of a voice. I think there's a lot that we can hear in another person's voice. A lot of their soul and their spirit, there's something that's transmuted when you're singing, certainly, but even when you're speaking, as you have experienced, when people feel they know you and they feel they love you just because of hearing your voice. It used to freak me out for sure. Many years of imposter syndrome and I hate the sound of my own voice, and what does this even mean? And I guess after a certain number of years of that feedback and feeling, becoming aware that I really connected with somebody, even through recordings that I'm very critical of, or I'm always performances that I'm very self-critical of, or how is this even? What am I even doing here? But then becoming aware year after year of all those connections being made and all for positive effect, I just learned to trust in it. That even if I'm not satisfied with what I've just done, or I don't like the sound of my own voice, or I always feel inside myself like some battling some sense of unworthiness. I just have to trust that that process is working in all its imperfections. You're putting yourself out there through your voice. Somebody else is taking it in, and something is happening that's positive in that equation. And so I've stopped even trying to understand it or judge it. I just respect that it's happening of its own accord. And I don't know, I try to worry less about my side of it and just be present and trust in the process,
I feel like everyone has a superhero power, and a lot of people never get to figure out what it is or use it. And I feel like this is definitely yours. You have a way of connecting with people when I'm at Ani concerts. And I know Dana can attest to this too. Being at an Ani concert, the crowd, it's not like any other concert. And I'm not talking about the makeup of, 85-90% women. I'm talking about the passion, the singing along with every word. You're singing their lives to them. There's a connection that kind of thing is not easy, which leads me to a serious question. Is another thing that surprised me about the documentary. Here's how I know Ani. I know this larger than life, only showing the strongest. And even when you're singing about pain, there's this strength. As I don't think I'd ever seen you cry before. Oh my God, that made me emotional. I didn't expect that. You really let all of us in this documentary and showed some really vulnerable moments. I personally want to go thumb wrestle a guy in Wisconsin, but we won't talk about that. There were just these moments where you were really, really letting us in. Was that hard for you either at the moment of filming or watching the documentary back? Did that make you uneasy?
Well, again, I appreciate your perceptiveness because I think, in my songs, I do. There's a degree of fantasy that's involved because, again, I'm trying to write myself into existence in these little numbers. That's why so many songs over the years. It's so that I can get there myself because, so there's always like a little bit of, what happened and what I what I should have or what I could have done. It's always the third verse. I'm always victorious. Well, not always, but I think I've been subliminally trying to empower myself by writing, by writing it first and then learning how to become it. I mean, I think a lot of writers write to become. Artists are creating art in order to get there, to make a room for themselves or a path to where they want to be. But so, yeah, showing even more candidly and literally myself walking through my life, Dana, allowing Dana to make a documentary. It's a whole other level of realness and exposure and stuff like that. And luckily, I'm very practiced because of my job and being in public or on stage a lot with these songs. I'm very practiced at I don't know, pretending I'm alone in it, even on stage, right? There's a room full of people, but there's something in my brain that clicks into, I'm just alone in this song. There's nothing to worry about. You don't have to stay submerged in what do I look like and what do I sound like and what do people think and how am I being judged and what is this, because then you're just crippled with, self-consciousness. So I just had to sort of employ that in my daily life when Dana was around. Like, just don't even think about it. Shut down that part of your brain that worries about being seen or judged, and just go on with your life, and what you got to do, what you got to do. Focus on the task at hand. And so that was a new level of challenge with Dana and a camera on her shoulder. But I think that there is something that it practiced in my brain where I can shut that off and just, I'm just going to say whatever I would say to Dana right now, as though that thing wasn't on her shoulder.
Dana, I got to ask you about a moment that I can't stop thinking about in the documentary that is far from serious. Now we're going to go the other direction. As a huge Prince fan, the moment when you're in the house going through stuff, going through a box, Dana, did you have a weird moment when Ani's like, oh yeah, here's a CD Prince sent me, and here's my when I was spending time with Bob Dylan, here's the record that Bob Dylan writes a freaking novel, which is great because you could probably understand it better when he writes it than sings it. That's a terrible Bob Dylan joke. But I wonder, Dana, were you thinking, how is she being so nonchalant about a CD Prince center?
Yes, but that's so Ani. I mean, and I guess going back to the whole vulnerability and realness, I think that there's something bigger that Ani does with that really speaks to people. She is very real, she doesn't, she can't censor herself, you know what I mean? And at times it's hilarious, like with the Prince tape and the Bob Dylan album and all that. And at times it's really searing and emotional. But I think that is so refreshing in this day and age where people are packaged and feelings are packaged and it's content. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
She's very raw. She's very real. She speaks about things that are sloppy and messy because that is what life is. That's what people are. We don't want to present ourselves that way, but that is what it is. And I think that her music has also been that from the get-go. She has said things that people weren't saying, that weren't packaged. It wasn't perfect and it was a little messy, but it's real. And I think that is part of her superpower too. And I think that speaks to people and it's refreshing. And and it can be very funny sometimes too, But I think that resonates with people in a very deep level because they see that Ani is who Ani is.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I saw this interview with a musician named Morris Hayes. Morris Hayes was the keyboard player for Prince for 15 years, probably. He was speaking about how when Prince spoke about Ani DiFranco?
Ani DiFranco was one of his heroes in terms of the way she did her business, the way that she, was kind of independent and really successful without that whole big label scenario. And I think that's something that he looked up to with regard to Ani. I mean, I talked to him about it a couple of times. He just really loved her.
How do you feel when you hear someone that is clearly one of the more talented artists to ever touch an instrument say words like that about you and about the craft you've been working on your entire life?
It blows my mind more and more. I think when I was young, I think it was maybe almost too dangerous to think about the weight or the scope of things, like being invited to Prince's house, going to a party and they're hanging out with one of my heroes. I mean, I can't tell you how much that is true in reverse. He's been my hero since I was very young, a teenager. And it's funny that you should ask about him. I have just been going back and remixing a song of mine that he sang on.
Are you talking about Providence or a song I don't know?
Providence, which I always regretted the way I mixed that, even the way I performed it. And I just thought, whoa, Prince is on one of my tracks and I messed it all up. So I have been remixing it, and my husband, who's a great mixer, has been helping me. And I came right off the bat. I was like, I got to re-sing this. The first thing I want to do is re-sing it because I hate the way I sang it and and this, that, and the other. And I hate the way I buried Prince's vocal. Prince's vocal is buried in the original mix. Like, I just want to beat myself up. And he convinced me. He's like, no, you have to keep this vocal. This is what Prince sang to. This is where you were. What is basically happening is we just stripped the whole track down to the guitar and our two vocals. And I added this cool new keyboard thing. And I think that's what the new version is going to be. I want to put out there soon. It sounds so much better with just him cranked and me. It suddenly works in a way that I didn't even know it could. Just amazed at what he gave to my little song. Like, he didn't phone it in. He brought the full measure of his creativity and his vision. In this version that I'm going to release soon, you can really hear it. And I just feel so overwhelmed now that I'm old enough and at a safe enough distance to really take it in. Like, wow, I can't believe he showed up like that for me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Incredible blessing.